Okay, well, I guess we're gonna go over this little thing right here, because, right, as it often happens during these times, this type of announcements, we have some leaks right before BlizzCon, rather BlizzcOnline, which has pretty much spoiled the entire thing. Now, I'm sure a few things have been left out, probably, maybe even on purpose by Blizzard, but we are going to go over what has transpired from this leaked announcement of all of the new systems and the new additions to the 9.1 patch of Shadowlands, starting with the main all-purpose one, which is going to be flying, because flying is going to be unlocked in 9.1 for all of the current zones of Shadowlands, Ardenweald, Maldraxxus, Ravendreth, and Bastion, not, of course, for the Mo. I have seen people legitimately surprised or even offended almost that you could not fly in the Mo, as if that was ever going to happen. Another part of the announcement is the addition of a new zone, Korthia, and we still don't know whether or not this is going to be a zone where you can use flying or not. At first glance, remember, we have had zones like MegaDungeon and Nazjatar, the last expansion where you could unlock flying in 8.2 in the Rise of Azshara patch. After you unlocked Pathfinder Part 2, you could also fly in those new zones, the newly added zones. So it could also be that you will be able to fly in Korthia. Then again, if Korthia is going to be just like one of the other zones that we have right now in the open world, it's not going to be that crucial. People are not frantically farming world quests nowadays to get AP for their weapon or for their necklace. It's not that necessary for you to run around, to stop running around and start flying around in the open world. Still, I'm sure it's going to at the very least invite more people to actually use the open world activities now that they can at least fly to get there faster. I still won't use them because they're useless, but one interesting part regarding flying is, remember, when we go and look at the first edition of Pathfinder, the unlocking of flying in the new expansion in Worlds of Draenor, it took 7 months for you to be able to start flying in the new expansion. Then we went into Legion, and in Legion it took you 7 months to get to flying in the Broken Isle patch, and then we went to BFA. This time around took you 10 months. So roughly 7 to 10 months on average. The expansion came out by the end of November, Shadowlands. So by a conservative margin, we would have to say that the 9.1 patch is going to come out in June, just to keep up the 7-month gap for you to get flying, you know, as a general prediction. The next point, follow-up, flying, is of course the new zone, because the jailer apparently is searching for the key to fulfill his twisted designs, and he has pulled a fragment of a long-lost domain into the Mo itself to find it. Now, for people who have completely skipped the lore, first of all, good job, you haven't missed much, but just as a reminder, Shadowlands actually has thousands upon thousands of these realms. It's not just these 4, dividing themselves with the Arbiter in Oribos in the middle. There is plenty more, so Korthia just happens to be one of them. And I mean, since they are using quite a few of the Legion or BFA systems, because they were proved successful, many of them, at least in the reception at the start, when we look at the Broken Isles or Argus in Legion, and then we look at MegaDungeon and Nazjatar in BFA, what can we expect from Korthia? Well, obviously, it is very likely it's going to have some sort of currency. It is going to have some sort of player power, maybe tied to their reputation, to the dailies / weeklies that are going to happen in Korthia. We might even get them moving from the Mo into Korthia and do the same thing in Korthia instead. Similar things with emissaries and the likes, considering this is what you did in MegaDungeon, this is what you did in Nazjatar, as well as Broken Isles in Legion. In Nazjatar and MegaDungeon, you had things like essences you needed because of the reputation. You needed to farm and grind every day. The weeklies, and then you had another essence tied to your bodyguards in Nazjatar, so you had double reputation farm inside of Nazjatar for player power. And then we also had the B word. We had benthic gear in Nazjatar, farming mana pearls. So this is what likely is going to happen. In Korthia, it's going to be the most up-to-date zone, so the most relevant for current content zone, and the other zones, the older zones at this point, we can say, even though we're just a few months into the expansion, Bastion, Ravendreth, Maldraxxus, and Ardenweald are going to sort of, slide in the background, as if they aren't already, because literally what are you doing that is relevant to your character for player power nowadays in these zones, right? Then there is also a cryptic announcement, which I'm sure they are going to go a little bit deeper on, which is regarding the Covenants. It is, with the strength of the Kyrian, Nightfey, Necrolords, and Ventir restored, embark on a campaign to unite the 4 Covenants and together launch an assault against the Jailer in his home territory. Now, some people have started, maybe even hopefully, debating whether or not this might mean having all the covenants combined. Not like a Dragon Ball Z fusion, but like being able to swap around the covenants freely, because now you're no longer sworn to a single covenant and having a very heavy story-driven choice. Now all the covenants are happy together, so it makes sense from a story perspective to be able to swap around. Of course, I will be happy. I think everyone would be happy if this was the case, but I don't think so. I think this is just strictly story-related. It's not going to have much of any impact in the game. Then we do also have something that will have, of course, a lot of impact in the game, which is going to be the new raid tier. Sanctum of Domination is going to be the Torghast raid, the unexplored reaches of Torghast in a 10-boss raid, where you will also be encountering the Eye of the Jailer and the Targru. Not to mention, of course, a completely unsurprising fight against Sylvanas. So one thing that people have pointed out when looking at this announcement is that we are just a few months into the expansion, and 9.1, the first major expansion, is going to launch immediately the Maw into the end tier, essentially. People were expecting and thinking that the Maw would have stayed here for a long time, at the very least throughout the expansion. You would have progressed throughout the Maw as the tiers and as the patches went on, until eventually by the end of the expansion you were able to take over. This doesn't seem to be the case. You're basically already sieging the raid zone, the big building at the end of the Maw, which nobody ever goes there because it's empty, by the first patch. So the question is going to be, what exactly are you going to do in 9.2, in 9.3? What is the Maw going to be there for? It's gonna be pretty interesting. Of course, everyone is going to be waiting with bated breath at the possibility of completely removing the Maw. That would be a nice change of pace, especially considering the possibility of people having to go back with a new raid tier to farming Stygia. People have stopped grinding Stygia for weeks now, and then they are reminded with the new raid tier that they have to go back to grind Stygia for some sockets. It's going to be a pretty bad awakening for many people if that is to be the case. We do also have, in a similar note to other features that Blizzard seems to be, I guess, taking inspiration from, Legion and BFA, we do have a new MegaDungeon. So after having Mechagon and having Karazhan, now we have Tazavesh, the Veiled Market. Finally, we can say we are going to have a dungeon where you can beat the brokers the fuck up. This greedy, slimy cutthroats, which do nothing other than stealing you out of your pocket of your money, finally are going to get what's coming for them, and people have already started, guessing which way it is going to function. Very likely, given that we have a track record from Mechagon and from Karazhan, that is going to be split into two, especially given that it's going to have 8 bosses. So it's sort of coming by itself, right? It's going to have a lower part with 4 bosses and the upper part with 4 bosses, and it's going to be split for Mythic Plus. The actual question people have been asking regarding this dungeon is whether or not you're going to have to wait a while before the dungeon gets translated from, Mythic 0 base version into being implemented into the Mythic Plus pool. Because this is what Blizzard has done before. They have basically kept the Mythic 0 default level for a while before turning into Mythic Plus. The kind of original reason is that the base version comes out at a much higher item level than your normal Mythic 0 dungeon. So it is as if you're already doing a high level Mythic Plus key once a week. So that was sort of the reasoning behind not immediately putting a fresh new dungeon into the Mythic Plus pool. We'll have to see. There are a few possible disappointments, things that we haven't heard of, but as I said, I don't think this is all. I think they are, keeping something for the actual announcement when BlizzCon is going to be live. One of the things that is not happening, doesn't seem like at least, is going to be being able to equip 2 legendaries. This is particularly interesting because we are moving pretty quickly with things like a new MegaDungeon with flying. It seems to be a little bit ahead of the curve. We do have the new raid tier, which looks like is going to come roughly 6 months into the expansion, but the legendaries are still going to be kept at 1. What is interesting is that what is there to do with Soul Ash? Probably, unfortunately, it looks like Blizzard is going to be taking the same MO they have had with Titan Residium. So they are going to reset the cost of upgrading or crafting a new legendary with Soul Ash, or they are going to simply increase it. So if right now it's going to cost you around 1,000 to 2,000 Soul Ash to craft or upgrade one legendary, in 9.1 it's going to cost something like 5 or 6 or 7,000. It would have made sense for you to keep up some Soul Ash or to stockpile in preparation for the next patch if you were thinking about using 2 legendaries, being able to equip 2 legendaries, or maybe Blizzard was going a different way, like for example being able to imbue 2 different legendary recipes in the same item, so effectively using double legendary in a single item, but nothing of the sort has been leaked. It is rather unlikely. Blizzard is purposefully leaving this out of the leaks to make the grand reveal during BlizzCon, I would say. So it does not look like we're going to get double legendary. This is kind of sad. We have to say this was going to be a big window of opportunity for, shaking up a lot of the specs, a lot of the builds and powers of multiple classes and specs. So the fact that it's not going to happen in 9.1, it's a little bit disappointing. At least we can look at the glass half full and say, well, then it's going to come in 9.2. So we already know there's going to be some excitement over that patch. So in closing, the part about the leaks regarding 9.1, since BlizzCon is very close, so we're going to have to see it for ourselves, I have to point out a question to you. What would have been, normally, ideally, your 9.1 patch? Like, what would you have wanted to see? Because many people, when I've read the speculations regarding 9.1, the wishes, they were on, of course. The raid tier was there, that's kind of a given. But some things that are not certain, we had things like a new dungeon, which we are getting, and this time is the double dungeon, which is coming much earlier than previous, because Karazhan and MegaDungeon came later in the expansions in Legion and BFA. I also read things about flying. Flying seems to be coming at about the similar rate of the previous expansions, but also the new zone. And unlike the previous expansions, it is also coming slightly faster than before, this new zone Korthia. So we are getting a new zone quickly, we're getting flying pretty quickly, we're getting a 10 boss raid, and a new mega dungeon. So, of the things you might have wanted from a big patch, we seem to have checked all the marks, right? The only point, of course, I will keep hammering on this, is the double legendary usage. That's the only one that could have made it perfect in terms of rounding out the patch. I guess some people might also go for the Covenant flexibility, maybe some double Covenant, dual Covenant specking and similar things, some more ability for you to wiggle around the Covenant usage. That could have been also a pretty popular choice by Blizzard, although considering how hard they have hammered on the importance, the story and RPG importance of choosing your Covenant, and they have gone on and on this before the expansion, turning their backs on this choice just a few months after the expansion in the very first patch, would have made them look like fools. Although sometimes that can be for the better. Make yourself look like a fool if it is for the betterment of the game. Would making Covenants more flexible being for the betterment of the game? Well, if we were to just listen to the community, then it would have been very likely a resounding yes. Now, off with the parts about the 9.1 patch and back to the parts about the 9.0.5 patch, because there is also some news there. There has also been the addition in the PTR about the Valor point cost. So another system coming out in 9.0.5, of course, being the Valor upgrade system for your Mythic Plus gear. And we know right now that there are 14 ranks. Rank 1 of your gear that you loot is going to be rank 184, basically the base gear. And then it's going to go up all the way to rank 14, which is item level 226. Your upgrade system will upgrade your item by 3 or 4 item levels, depending on the jumps it's doing. We currently do not know the actual amount of prices, the costs that it's going to cost you in terms of Valor. We do know the amount of Valor you can have. You can farm 750 Valor each week and keep a cap of 1500. So basically you can keep 2 weeks worth of Valor in your bags before having to spend it, or you're going to overcap. We also do know, this is something they already announced, that prices for upgrades are going to differ based on the power of the item. You can already see, things like this from the PvP vendors, for example. You are going to have, obviously, weapons costing more than wrists, or things like chests and helms and legs costing more than boots, gloves, and belts. This is also going to be rather obvious. PTR explorers have also been able to figure out that callings, your emissaries that you can do every day, 7 times a week basically, are going to give you 35 Valor, which totals out at 245 Valor per week from basically what is open world content, and the rest that you can get from raid bosses, and has been reported to dropping, for example, 135 Valor for just a +6. Now Valor is going to increase based on the level of your key, so with these numbers, looks like if you're someone who has already been doing over +10 in difficulty of your Mythic Plus keys, basically completing the Great Vault at 4 Mythic Plus keys every week is going to give you just enough of the Valor you need weekly. Not to mention you can still round out this number with your call links that you can do every day, but you don't have to because they are mostly useless unless you're poor. So it doesn't seem like the numbers are too bad to actually cap in Valor. There is another problem though, which isn't in getting the Valor itself, but rather in the cost it will take you to actually upgrade the items. People have been a little bit antsy, to be honest, because if we were to speculate, if we were to gauge the price that is going to cost, depending on the different types of items, some things are going to come out pretty ugly. We are talking about almost a month for you to be able to upgrade a one-ended intellect weapon from 210 to 220 over 3 weeks, just to upgrade one piece of legs, one piece of pants. So, of course, this is the PTR. Blizzard is going to have plenty of time to tune it and reduce what is going to cost you to actually upgrade each of the items, or simply increase the amount of value you can earn every week. Either way, what do you think should be the average time for you to upgrade an item? Because I've heard people say 1 week, I've heard people say 2 weeks. We can say that I think, assuming you are looting 210 item level items from Mythic plus 15 keys, I think going from 210 to 220 should probably take 1.5 weeks. Something like in 1 week you will be able to upgrade only 1, but then the following week you will be able to upgrade 2, and then 1 week you will be able to upgrade 1, and the following week you will be able to upgrade 2. Something like that. At the end of the day, if you have 6, 7, 8, 9 items in your entire gear that come from Mythic Plus, if it's going to take you 1 month each, that's going to be 6, 7, 8 months to be able to upgrade them just to 10 item levels each, which is going to be way too long, right? So I do think it cannot be that long, the time it takes you to upgrade each item. Yes, it's good that you put Valor at the end of a Mythic Plus key, so you get people more interested and more excited into running a key because they now know they are working towards something. However, if the something they are working for is going to take that long, then the effect is going to be much, much diluted. It's going to be much less powerful. It's going to be much less of a drive, of a draw to people to get into Mythic Plus. This is going to be up to Blizzard to balance, honestly. I do hope we get close to the 1 to 2 weeks per 10 item level upgrades. I think that should be the sweet spot. Closing the announcements, or rather the leaks, if we are playing the game where we pretend that Blizzard totally didn't leak this on purpose, there is going to be, of course, in 9.1 a new affix. So time has flown really fast, but we have to come to the conclusion and ask ourselves, what do we think about Prideful? Prideful is, I think, going to be for the majority of the population very, very positive because it gives you a buff, It is very powerful. It makes you do much more damage, much more healing, take as a result less damage by simply being faster in the things you do. Also much of a help to healers when it comes to the mana regeneration. This is, amazing for a healer in Mythic Plus, but we also have to point out that we probably did not have enough time to scale that high, and also not enough people play at that high of a level. Me neither, most of the time. So many people have missed the part where at a certain point Prideful is going to take longer to kill than the time you would shave off of a boss if you had the buff. So that is why, for example, in the MDI, a race like Night Elf, which can use Shadow Meld and basically drop the entire party off of combat and ignore Prideful, is almost mandatory. Because in that case, not because the key is too high, because the keys for MDI, I think they were plus 18, so at that point it's still fine, but that was mostly just for speed. For the actual high keys that people are running now, from 22, 23, 24 keys, it gets to the point where many times you just don't want to kill the Prideful, because it's just too much of a slog, and also it is a serious expenditure of cooldowns to be able to kill while not dying from the AoE of Prideful. So I think for the majority of the population, Prideful will be thought of with nostalgia, with kindness. We'll have to see the new Affix and how it's gonna shape up compared to Prideful, and then we will see. We are going to close the video regarding the news and the changes for 9.0.5 and 9.1 with a cataclysmic change, because apparently there is a rumor, there is some whispers that Blizzard is intending to fix the bony, spiky spine of Forsaken players. There seems to be this possibly deep fake where a cloak on the back of a Forsaken player is fully hiding the spine. This, of course, is very traumatic content. If you were not ready for this, I'm sorry. I know it is very emotionally straining to be able to look at this type of change that Blizzard has been able to finally put into the game after some 15 years. the technological strides we have gone over from 2005 to be able to achieve this have truly been great. So we have to thank Blizzard for all the effort they have put in and realizing such a great feat for this game. So with this, it's time for me to leave. See you guys soon. Tomorrow we will go over probably what has been said and done at BlizzCon amongst other things. So see you guys soon. And in the meantime, why am I talking like this?